ChatGPT is also excellent if you need to create scripts or prepare yourself for maybe giving a presentation or a speech. ChatGPT can help you really outline that and think about that more without and help you make sure that you get everything covered. So let's do that with an example here. So let's say your manager comes to you and there's an all-company meeting and you need to give a speech on the importance of your department to the company, right? Why your department's important to the company. And let's do that and see what ChatGPT comes back with, right? So which just giving a speech can be nerve-wracking itself, but this could help actually write an entire script for you, example. So we might ask it to write a script. So please, write a script for a presentation to the entire company. So more detail is good. Entire company about, and let's say you work in accounting, about the accounting department and its importance to the company. All right. All right. So congratulations. We're all accountants now. All right. So I hope you enjoy that. All right. So think about how agonizing that might be to do and how to really start outlining and structuring that. Here it's coming right back. Right. You might not know anything about accounting, but they're going to kind of give you an example here. Right. So I'm here today talking about the accounting part and its importance to the company. Okay. So what is accounting? Right. And now, why is the accounting department important to our company? This is nice, too, where it gives a little briefing about accounting that's not going to go on for 17,000 pages. That's what you'd want, maybe in a short little speech to the company. Why is the accounting department important? And they'll talk about the different importance of the accounting department. Just our general things that are universal to accounting departments. Now, maybe your accounting department doesn't do certain things. Maybe your accounting department doesn't have a role in budget and forecasting. Well, that'd be unusual, but let's say it didn't. There's more finance department or something. You can just take that stuff out and then build on this as an outline and add in there, with like, who are the team members in the accounting department? Who's the person you would contact if you need help from the accounting department as far as a company-wide speech, right? Or something of that nature. So, but either way, I now have an entire script that I can start as a basis point and then edit the script and then add in more unique things like who's in the department, what's my role in the department, how does accounting work, what are the accounting department's hours if that matters, when we're busy, at the end of the months and end of quarters, and by the way, get your expense reports on time or accounting gets mad, those kind of things you could have in there too. But you can see for scripting of any type of thing, you can just add in add in there like a script for anything. Like let's say you want to write a script for asking the city to add a stop sign in your neighborhood. No way I'm going to spell neighborhood. Why can't I spell neighborhood? Neighborhood for child safety. All right. So cars are going by your neighborhood real fast. You're going to give a presentation to the school board or maybe the city and say the city, and you want them to spend money and do that. So here you have your city council members or whatever you might be. It might be county commissioners. It might be whatever is local to you because you're going to adapt all this. But this time, I'm requesting to write this, and you put at this intersection. You have to put in the intersection and stuff. I urge you to consider this. So here's just a short little thing that's about giving a little script thing for organizing your thoughts around just asking for a stop sign in your city neighborhood. So, things that are beyond that too. This could be adapted into an email as well, for example. So there you have it. ChatGPT can really be helpful if you give a lot of presentations or if you don't give a lot of presentations. It can help organize your thoughts, and then you build on that and customize it. You're not plagiarizing or copying and pasting because it wouldn't make any sense. You might not be in the accounting department, for example, but you can get an outline. In fact, you could just use this example I just used and put in your own department, and boom, you just had a script for your own department right now. One thing I find ChatGPT to be just immensely beneficial for is my own education, learning about different things and helping myself, whether it's a work environment or in a personal environment. And we're going to talk about the work environment around some soft skills, and we're going to give some examples here. But think about areas of your own improvement where ChatGPT might be able to help educate yourself or give you some ideas for personal improvement, for example. So let's look at a couple of soft skills. So this one we're going to be in soft skills. The next lesson we're going to talk about some hard skills. So some real technical, maybe some technical type skills as an example. But this is soft skills. So let's start with talking about critical thinking. We'll talk a little bit about oral communication as an example, and we'll wrap up with like leading a meeting, and just as for some examples. So critical thinking is one of the most important things out there right now for businesses and folks that are hiring. So if we look at ChatGPT, and we could just say, well, how can I get better at critical thinking, right? Which gets into decision making and all that too as well. So, this is a really broad type thing. It's going to be pulling from lots of resources. So it might take a little extra time. As you can see, it took like an extra, 1 second, 2 seconds. I mean, isn't that amazing? I mean, if you're not like at this point saying, oh my goodness, just keep going because we got more, it'll be great, right? So then it talks about, here are ways you can, practical ways you can improve your critical thinking skills. And it gets into that, as far as introspection, stuff like that. And let's say I'm reading this, take the time to consider multiple viewpoints and all that. And let's say it's giving good information, but let's say I'm also, I've been told by my boss that sometimes I have, in biases in my decision making, right? So, I could say, well, what is that? What are some common biases in decision making, kind of related decision making, kind of related to critical thinking, right? We got that. But bias, not in this case that a person would be, if they were told that they're a racist or don't like a certain gender or whatever. It's just more the scientific type biases, and you'll see this coming up here, like anchoring bias here, for example, when people rely heavily on the first piece of information they receive when making a decision. So if you're taking in lots of information, the first piece might be, that's the answer based on that. That's an anchoring bias. But you can see things like there's these different biases, loss aversion, like when you've already put money into something, you're motivated not to, you don't want to lose, or you don't want to lose more, you don't want to take risks, right? So these are examples of like, okay, here are some decision-making biases, and you can look at this and say, do I have any of these, of these biases, right? And what that might mean, what is, confirmation bias? Like I might say, okay, that sounds like me. Maybe I say, could you expand on confirmation bias and provide an example? I like to sometimes ask it to provide an example because that helps my learning when I see what's an example of this. Like I read it, I understand it, but let me read it some more in more detail. This is the expanding on it, and could you provide me an example, right? So it's going to it's going to confirm what it is, and then it's going to give me an example of this too. Actually talking about weight loss or whatever. So I might want to ask about, provide an example, let's say for accountants or in the work environment or whatever. And then also why this can be a problem. So, this is an example where I'm educating myself, let's say around critical thinking, decision making. Let's start up a new chat real quickly, a couple other ones. Let's say I want to be better at communication, right? Let's say with oral communication, I might say, what are some great tips if nervous about, what do you think I'm going to say? Public speaking, right? Public speaking. Something most people are nervous about. You might have put in your own thing. If you did, just say, go back and use ChatGPT and put it in for whatever makes you. But here's a few things you can try if you're nervous about public speaking, right? And it talks about practice with a friend, choose the topic you're interested in, use visual aids, take deep breaths. I'm a deep breath guy, positive self-talk, focus on your audience, all this stuff. So here's a nice bullet point list of things that if you're nervous, you can just look at this and just say, oh, I could do some of these to help me with my oral communication skills. And sometimes I'll answer with a, nice little make you feel good, right? Finally, remember the more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll become, right? This could be an outline for a whole course even. So there's an idea there. Let me leave you with one last one. Like, let's say, start a new chat here. What are some best practices when leading a meeting? Okay. Wow, that was some number one typing poorness there. Here are some tips for leading a meeting, right? So if you do not have much experience with leading meetings, this really kind of laid it out for you how to lead maybe your first meeting, right? And then this is just tips that you can build on, and then you can ask it more to follow up more, and different tools in there. Let's say I want to facilitate discussion, encourage participation from all attendees. Well, that sounds nice, but how do I do that? How do I, in a meeting, copy paste, facilitate discussion, encourage participation from all attendees, right? So now I'll build on this and give me some strategy. So you see how I'm educating myself, talk about independent questions and what those are, encourage people to share their opinions, inclusive language, blah, blah, blah. And then you can ask it more to expand on all this some more, or you can ask it for examples. So those are some examples of soft skills that you can ask it, and think about what do you maybe want to improve in terms of a soft skill. Start using ChatGPT to start educating yourself as well. Now let's start talking about some more technical or even some hard skills that you can use ChatGPT as well, like how to do a certain thing in Excel or programming or something, right? So let's talk about using some hard skills in terms of how ChatGPT can help us. And think of the hard skills like those technical skills. And we're going to use some examples that are really accessible to everybody, like Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint. I'm going to show you a couple examples how we can make that better for us. It's not a whole Excel course. I'm just going to do some short examples on that. But if you're like a coder or a software engineer, I'm going to show you how ChatGPT can help you with debugging or helping write code too. It'll literally blow your mind. And if you're not a software engineer, you should still watch the end, because you're going to look at that and say, is there some technical stuff that I want to improve on that, just if it can do this for coding, what can it do for me on what I want to do, maybe with something like Excel or PowerPoint. So let's do that with ChatGPT. So let's say we use Excel, right? The spreadsheet in our business, and I use spreadsheets all the time, and I love pivot tables, but I always forget how to do them because I don't do pivot tables much, right? And you might not but you and my audience might be an expert in pivot tables, or you might be like, what's a pivot table? So let's find out and actually show us how the steps are to make it. Not like what is a pivot table, but how do I make a pivot table? That's what I really want to know. And I certainly don't want to know the history of spreadsheets. I mean, I'm sure it's exciting. My wife, the accountant, probably would love it. No, not so much. So maybe I say, how do you make a pivot table? And if you don't even know it, just describe what it is. How do I sort my information, with columns with an arrow on top or something like that, right? But how do I make a pivot table in Excel, right? All right. So again, this should not come back with Excel is a spreadsheet that's loved by millions around the world, or something like that. So here it is. To create a pivot table, Microsoft Excel, follow these steps, right? So then it's going to walk you through. Select the data, go to the Insert tab. It tells you where it is on the ribbon. Click on the Pivot Table button, and it walks you right through how to do that. So if I don't make pivot tables often, and I'm trying to search the internet, maybe I'm trying to watch a YouTube video or something like that, look, while you're doing that, I already got the answer, right? I got the answer of ChatGPT here. And it's walking me through how to make this, which is, in Excel can be a little tricky to do, but at least gives me started and walks me right through step by step. Hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions. Maybe I want to respond like, that's great, I love you, ChatGPT, or something like that. So that's an Excel pivot table, right? Maybe I'm working in PowerPoint. I say now I might want to start a whole new chat, by the way, but let's say I don't. Let's say I start in PowerPoint. I didn't capitalize that. And let's say in PowerPoint, how do I make bullet points better? Like in PowerPoint, how can I make my bullet points more graphical? Better that way, more picture oriented versus just like 1,000 bullet points or something like that. And this is a pretty wild question, right? Will it tell me? And because I'm not telling you specifically like up here where, how do I make a pivot table? I'm asking more general, how can I do that? Can I do this? How do I do this? And then it says there are a few ways you can do this, right? And you can say, you can use shapes and lines to create bullet points, use icons, use images, use a smart art graphic. This is where I was kind of trying to get to. Like, smart art graphics, it was a little bit more, it's not advanced, but it's something that a lot of people wouldn't know about, right? So, how do I, let's say I want to pick up on that, right? So how do I use number 4, smart art graphic, step by step? All right. So use smart art graphic as a bullet point in PowerPoint. Follow these steps. Select the text you want to turn into bullet points. So first I'm creating bullet points. Go to the Insert tab, Smart Art, and then it'll walk me through how to turn these into more of a graphical unit, right? And click OK and all this. So it's really walking me through this. So if I'm somebody who really doesn't, I use PowerPoint, let's say if a person uses it a lot, but they really never need to make it super fancy or try something new like with bullet points and a more smart art graphics, I don't have to take a whole PowerPoint course. Just told me real quickly how to do that simple type thing here. And step by step, it's right there. I don't have to Google search it and try to find different places or anything. I could just do it right here, right there. All right, so that's a couple hard skills there from Microsoft Excel. Now let's look at something really advanced. Like let's talk coding now. I am not a coder, so I am not an expert in this. I wouldn't even know what this thing is saying. I'm going to start a new chat though, but I want you to know this because it's talking about how do I make an HTTP request in JavaScript. Those are the type of questions it can do. So maybe I want to like something like, how do I make API code, wrote this down in Univert. Did I get that right? I got my notes here. Yeah, see, I didn't type that wrong. They're not sure what Univert is. Univert is anything. It's Unirest in Springboard. See, I knew I was typing things right. So how do I, see, that's a good example. I did that intentionally. Do you see what I did intentionally, unintentionally? See, I'm not a coder, right? So you're probably saying, it's not Univert, it's Unirest. Unirest. And it's in Springboard. Come on, Steve. How do I make an API code, in Unirest in Springboard? Now it's going to tell me how to do that. To make an API request using the Unirest library in Springboard, it's going to tell me that, give me some things, and then this is where your mind's getting blown. If you've not seen this before, if you're a programmer, your mind's just getting blown, isn't it? Because it's like, wow, they're giving me the actual, what do I type, code, the whole bit. Once the library is included, you can make an API request with the following code, and there it goes, right? This will send you a GET request to the specified URL, right? And there I've got more coding, more information on there too as well, and this will keep going on there too. And maybe I just want to explain Unirest in Springboard, right? Maybe I want to just have more general knowledge on that if somebody did. As far as all that, and it talks about okay, what is this? We just learned all the coding stuff. Again, I'm not a coder, but it talks about what this is, how it works, and how you can use this code, request APIs, other word services, and et cetera, et cetera. But this is a very high-level technical skill, right? This is the type of stuff people spend a long time getting educated on. And here I'm able to start getting information on this and getting some exposure to this and there's some examples here too. I can even copy the code here. Look at that. I can copy the code to my clipboard. So I can go and paste that code. Are you appropriately freaked out now if you're a software engineer? If you haven't not seen this before, you must be getting freaked out. I hope you are. It's freaking me out. Maybe it's because I don't know enough, right? So let's say, and we're going to stop this chat, but I had a previous chat where, let's see if I have it here, debug code requested. So I created a code, I asked it, could you debug this code? Right, here's another example. And it'd be like, I'd be happy to if you gave me the code. Nice. So I didn't give it the code, right? So this is the code that I wanted debugged, right? So, and let's say, I'm going to create this, and I'm going to say, let me go back to a new chat. And I'm going to take that and say, could you debug this code? And copy paste that code, hit enter, and let's see what it says. It's going to analyze my code, and it's going to tell me I'm having an error, right? And it's debugging it for me. There's a potential error in this code. it's related to the integer, right? Y is equal to 0. If you see in here, y is equal to 0 is going to be a problem if you're dividing by y, right? So to avoid this error, you can add check before decision, all this. And here's how you can modify this function to include this check to make sure that your y is not being used as a 0 in a division problem that's going to give you a bug error and be a problem. And here's the code with this modification. Again, I could copy this code, and now I have this, and I can start using this and see how this has been added to my ChatGPT library. So those are some examples of hard skills, whether it's something that a lot of us use, like Excel or PowerPoint, and some skills that can get real detail-oriented, like related to coding, like or whatever that might be, whether it's in Java or Python or whatever, or maybe you're looking for something specific to like SAP or Salesforce or something like that. You can do that as well. It's really more limited by your imagination. So I hope you found this interesting too, because sometimes it's trying to find the answer, and you just want to find the answer so you can keep on doing your job. This is where ChatGPT can really help with really complex and challenging hard skills. But the key is you've got to give it the information to do. So don't be like me and say, could you debug this code and not give them code? You got to give them the code. One thing you can use ChatGPT for is to take large amounts of information and then take that and provide it back to you in a summary form. Maybe we've had to read articles or read documents that are just hugely long, and we just want to get a gist of an idea first to see if we should even continue reading, or maybe we just want the summary because we're very busy people. So I'm going to show you how you can take a longer piece of something that's already been created and have ChatGPT boil that down into something that's easily for us to consume in terms of a summary of that type of article. So here's the example. So I have this article that is like 6 pages long on the autofocus system, right? And the autofocus system, by the way, is like a time management system, right? A time management system to help you be more productive. And it's this article, you can just see it's poorly written. I mean, as far as just there's no images, it's just all over the place. The text is bad. Can you imagine looking at this? There's gaps, there's all sorts of stuff. So this is not, the easiest thing to read anyways. It's about 6 pages, right? And I'm like, oh boy, I don't want to really struggle through this. Can ChatGPT take this system, which is an interesting system, the autofocus system for time management and productivity, and boil this down into something, from 6 pages that's really hard to read into something that's more of a summary type point. So let's see if it does that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, can you summarize this article? All right. And then what I'm going to do is I've already copied, I'm going to paste the entire article in there. You can see all this stuff in here. Those are the whole articles in there. I hit enter, and okay, it's got this 6-page nasty article, and it's going to, which is on a good topic. Now, don't get me wrong, the topic's good, and it's going to summarize that for it. So now think about this. If I start reading this article, it'll be hard on my eyes and all. ChatGPT is already summarizing the autofocus system for managing and completing tasks. It's a productivity type system. And it's going to walk right through how to do that in a summary type manner. Think about the documents and things you might have to read, technical manuals, or you want to read some articles that might be for your own improvement at work or whatever, and you're like, and see how it's added now to my chat list here. I just took that 6-page, hard to read, poorly fonted article into something that's really just really one big paragraph. That should be broken in other paragraphs, right? So now I've got something that's easier for me to consume. In fact, here's a hot tip for you. Let's say I want to take this because it's a part of my chat where we're talking to a friend, and I'd say, can you make this into a bullet point format? All right, so bullet point, that's the French for point. That's not for all my French friends. That's not French at all. So can you make this, I'm taking this part, because this is what we're chatting here, and I'm asking, can you take this and put this into a bullet point format? So already start doing that, see? So sure, here are the steps I'll focus in a bullet point form, right? Actually, it's actually taking the original article because it's pulling all this stuff, but it's also pulling from here. But it's pulling from the whole conversation to basically make this into something. Now, this is something that's really easier to read, right? I want a step-by-step thing on how to use this system this autofocus system so I can be more productive, right? And now it's walking through, how to do it with a notebook, list of tasks. It's walking you right through to do that as you're looking at that. Talking about in this system, you work on the item for as long as desired versus, let's say, the Pomodoro technique. In fact, let's say I like the system, I'm like, I could then build on that and say, I could have some pros and cons of the system. But let's say could you compare autofocus to Pomodoro, which is another type of time management type technique, right? And Pomodoro does have limits as far as how long you spend on stuff, right? It says they're both time management methods that can help individuals increase their productivity and focus. And then I'll walk right through what the autofocus system is. And then they'll walk through what the Pomodoro system is. And then you can go from there. You can ask, what's the pros and cons of each? And you're really starting to expand on that, because not only is it pulling from the article, but now it's pulling from the wider AI system. So it's not limited to the article. It's pulling from the AI system. So just bear with me. Pros and cons of autofocus, right? So this is not pulling from the other stuff. If it's in the article, it might pull a little bit, but it's really pulling from a wider AI thing. So I'm not limiting myself. It's building on this chat, right? So this is nice, right? Maybe I looked at the autofocus up top here and it had a nice summary, and I'm like, well, should I do this? Sure, here's the pros of doing this, but there's some cons too. What are the cons to it? Well, it may not be suitable for tasks that require more structured, scheduled approach. That need long focus over a longer period of time, because it's more like short focus time periods. So it really gives me an idea. So just by doing that, I just learned the autofocus system and maybe how it compares to Pomodoro as an example. So using ChatGPT to basically take an article and boiling it down to something that's summarized, you can get the information you need quickly just from that. But then you can build on that and increase your education, your knowledge by asking questions about, give me examples, give me, what are the pros and cons? I could ask it for an example, give me examples. So all those kind of things you can do to kind of keep building it out to help with your education as well.